Hey everybody, it is not 8 o'clock. It's I don't know, 8:08 p.m. on Friday night. And this is Late Night with Renee Pride and Master Network. So sorry for starting a little bit late tonight. I'm working with my guest and he's trying his best to get on to get to you guys. But right now they're trying to figure out their technical difficulties. So it will be worth it when we get it figured out, I'm sure. So I just wanted to say, I hope you all had a great week. Always love to hear your wins. Hello, Victoria. So good to see you tonight. Hope you're doing well. And one of the first to say hello. Oh, and Gary, hello. Gary says, hey, Rockstar to me, but I just want to give a big shout out to you, Gary, because for those of you that are Master Networks crew, you know that we have this major focus group going right now. And it is a 12-week class, and Gary is leading the way on that and pouring into others and teaching us how to do, how to build chapters like he has, like the rock star he is in Texas. So if you're not on it, you need to get on it. Hello, Lynn. How are you? Beautiful lady. Good to see you tonight. So hope you guys have all had an amazing week. And I'm excited about if we get to figure this out and if Dave's able to come on with me tonight. I'm really excited about my guest. And happy Friday. Now, here's the thing. I don't think this is Master Networks Inc. My guess is that this is Mr. Corey Bauman in this comment. And for those of you that know, we as show hosts have admin access to Master Networks Inc. And so we never can comment as ourselves. It's always funny because it's like, oh, shoot, it comes in as Master Networks. So hello from Harker Heights, Texas. Hello again. I think I've seen you every Friday night. It's starting to feel like a Friday night thing. So tonight, I wanted to bring to you one of my friends, and actually his wife is a dear friend of mine. And it's super neat because from my perspective, not everybody has the chance to have a career like this person does. I think they get to see a lot of, over the years, they've seen a lot of different things. And one of the reasons my mind was on this week, as we've all navigated so many different changes this year. And, you know, you can use the word pivot, new normal, whatever you want to say. All the phrases are starting to get old at this point, but we've navigated so many different things, but we also, you know, we have had a lot of changes and we have a lot going on in our world right now. And a lot of times I think we could use ways to navigate that more successfully and more respectfully with others. And so I have no doubt that our guest tonight is going to give us all kinds of tips. With that, he's backstage. There you are, Mr. Dave Bernthal.
Hey.
Hello. Hey.
Hello. I think we're in business.
We're in business. Look at that. You can figure amazing things. You can, old dog, new tricks.
We've gone from the desktop to the iPad, and now it's the phone. So hopefully the phone will get us through all this.
Well, you know what? We won't make you hold your phone too long. We'll let you talk fast, right?
All right. Well, you know, I found out about this this morning, so I just made a few notes, and hopefully I can have more of a discussion than just me talking.
Yes, for sure.
Nobody wants to spend their Friday night listening to me.
But Dave, let's be real. Like, when have Jane, excuse me, when have Jane and I not gotten you into some kind of shenanigan, right?
Right. Pretty much, yeah.
So, I mean, being asked on a Friday morning to do something on a Friday night, that's nothing new. Nothing new.
No. So, this year, because, you know, this is about as far in advance as you can plan.
Right.
You know, with all this craziness going on.
It is. It's so interesting and so much change. And I know you guys have had, so you recently retired. Well, now we're almost 4 years into it, right?
Yeah, I retired from the federal court, and I do a little arbitration and mediation in the private sector. But as far as my court activities, they're in the rearview mirror.
You hung up the judge's robe, huh?
Up the robe, yes, indeed. And it would be a tough time to be a judge right now in a variety of respects. Just the logistics, the mechanics of trying to hold court when you have, well, courthouse closures, and then you try to open, but you got to keep people 6 feet apart. The courtrooms aren't designed for that. Jury boxes sure aren't designed for that. Jurors are going to be afraid to come in to serve. It's not the most popular thing anyway. And now they're like, oh, I'm going to go there and somebody's going to sneeze on me and I'm going to get sick. So it's tough right now.
Yeah, you can't see it clearly, but that is my jury summoned right there.
Oh,
for federal court. So I would have been in court with you. I know. I know.
Enough to bring me out of retirement.
It would be my first in federal, so we'll see if I get called. So far, no go.
I don't think they're doing much.
Yeah. So I'm going to start out. We're going to go completely personal for just a minute and start out with that before we go into anything else. So I want you to tell them a very fun story because you're not a federal judge anymore, right? So we can tell some things that maybe are funnier now because you're retired. So you have a story that I think they would all enjoy about, and I think it also gives a tribute to one of your dear friends that unfortunately is no longer with us, but that brought fun to your life. So can you tell them just a little story about a helicopter in your backyard?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So in the middle of winter, a few years back, our friends have a helicopter, and my friend, who's now deceased, would fly over from a nearby community and land in our backyard. And so one day in the heart of winter, snow on the ground, they let us know, and we tried to alert the neighbors. There, it's not a lot of kids out playing in the winter, but just to be sure. Well, they land. Get out. They're all bundled up. They come plowing through the snow into the back door. And within minutes, I look out and there's a police officer creeping up toward the helicopter. So I yell out the back door, hey, what's going on? Well, to not belabor it too long, apparently one of the new neighbors, not familiar with this, had called the police. And they had sent out the local version of the SWAT team, which I think was maybe that guy. And he came in, want to make sure everything was good. And he said, yeah, we got a call that a helicopter landed in your backyard. And two men got out and came in. Well, the wife was mortified because she's kind of a glamour lady, and to be referred to as a man sort of just kind of ruined her day. But yeah, they take that security pretty seriously.
That's right. When you're a federal judge, we got to protect you.
Well, we've had, again, sadly, proof of the fact that some people want to hurt the judges or their families. It just happens.
Yeah.
So they do have to be careful.
For sure. I just think it's a fun story. When Jane first told me, I remember that story. You caused quite a stir in this little town that you lived in.
It's a really small town, and for those not familiar with it, so a helicopter landing in the backyard was a big deal. And I think our daughter's boyfriend at the time showed up right in the middle of this, and they ran him off. For which I was grateful. At
that time.
At that time. Yeah, he's long gone now.
Well, you have a comment. You have a fan already. Dave, you look like you could share so much insight and wisdom. I'm excited to learn from you. So you got some love from the Gulf Coast already. Look at that.
Appreciate that. I hope I don't disappoint.
I don't think you will. So mediation, and I actually looked up the definition, not that I didn't, fully understand, but just kind of look it up to say, you've moved into, you do a lot of mediation, and you probably did a lot as a judge of, putting those things together, but it's a noun that's intervention in a dispute in order to resolve it, or intervention in a process or relationship. So with that in yeah, fancy for what you do. So with that in mind, like one of the things that I've been thinking about is looking at the current climate of our nation, in fact, our world. And right now we see so much polarization and or attention given to polarization, right? Like whether real or whether whatever it is. What would you recommend, like maybe some tips or stories or just some things that for our daily conversations, as we encounter those types of things, like charged situations, right? Like emotional situations, how do we navigate that?
Well, yeah, some of them, can't be. You might have a situation where you have somebody that's going to rob the bank, and you just happen to be there at the wrong time. But things that can be managed, I have some ideas that arise from my days in doing mediation, including now. But you're right. We It seems to me that in the past, that which I've experienced and that which I've studied from before my time, when we as a country were faced with especially an external threat, we pulled together. People put down their differences for a while and pulled together, and until things got good again, then we went back to fighting with one another. But now we have, you said it, it's polarized. We've turned on one another, and you see it constantly. I'm to the point where I don't want to watch the news. I get, like everybody else, I get emails with ridiculing people who, don't think like the sender of the email. And so let's just use one example. I mean, this COVID-19, the pandemic, all of the different aspects of that, the masks being one example. Now you get people fighting in stores. Well, I'm not going to wear a mask. You can't make me wear a mask. I don't want to wear a mask. I've got rights. And by the way, you don't have a constitutional right to not wear a mask in Costco. I'll throw that in for a
That's a federal judge throw in.
just a throw in, yeah. But these are very firmly held beliefs, and then you got people. You got to wear a mask, to protect me, and I'll wear one to protect you. So you have that issue. You have the issue of, should we return the kids to school? Should we not return the kids to school and do it all online? Should the governor close down health clubs and restaurants and bars, etc.? Oh no, you got to open them up. We're going to kill the economy. These are raging debates. And now what I'm seeing on the news is people threatening the decision makers. There was a group of not healthcare, but public health officials interviewed the other day. I think it was on the Today Show. But people talking about being threatened because they were making decisions or recommendations, and it's like we've just gone off the rails. And so, to get back to this, we got to get rid of the anger. That seems to me to be first and foremost. We got to somehow flush the anger, and that's easy to say. But when you have, a life-threatening condition, an economy-threatening condition, people are afraid of losing their jobs or having their business go bankrupt, or just devastation. It's hard for that. Then you have the conflict that arises when you hear of some individual, a citizen, dying after an encounter with the police, and all of the eruption that took place after George Floyd in particular, but others that kind of were at least referenced at the same time. And all of this then superimposed over all this is the fact that it's an election year. So you have people campaigning and trying to use these various things to promote their candidacy and run the other people down. And we've gotten to the point, of course, where a campaign is me telling the voters why you're bad and you're telling them why I'm bad, and as opposed to, hey folks, I have an idea, here's how we can fix a problem. So that is just a thumbnail description of what I perceive to be part of the problem. So how can some of the mediation concepts help. Well, as again I said, you have to get rid of the anger somehow. And as a mediator, sometimes I felt like that was part of my role, to just let people vent and kind of try to develop a rapport and understanding. I understand you're upset, and I think I understand why, or I want to know better why. That's important. Let people vent. But in the larger context, I think we have to figure out a goal. What is the goal of this group or that group? What's your objective? What do you want to achieve? Now, if you have somebody who says, "Well, I want it all my way, plus I want to humiliate the other side," I
Have
guess
you ever had that? Maybe have you ever
well,
had that spouses or something like that ever happen?
you do, you kind of get that more in the domestic relations cases, which fortunately I didn't have to do after I left the state court. But even there, you have to, for that situation, you just have to sit them down and say, "Well, I understand how you might feel that way. These are very emotional situations, but it's not going to work that way. And you can spend a lot of money to get to the end, and it won't be all going to you. Plus, your spouse is going to be personally humiliated in public. That's not going to happen. So you want to get real, or do you want to, just waste everybody's time?" But if you can identify a mutually agreeable, sometimes I would start a mediation and say, "Now, you all are here. You want to go. You're just looking for a fair resolution, right? Both sides. You want fairness. You want a fair result. Oh yeah, yeah. So, well, then we shouldn't have any problem, because I think if you both want something that's fair, we should already be settled." But then they look at you like, "Well, my definition of fair is not the same as his definition of fair," and therein lies the problem. But sometimes establishing a little line of communication can help people understand that maybe there's a universal fairness that takes into consideration the other interest in a case or in an issue. So I don't have anything magical here.
No, but one thing that I heard you say that I think is very important, a couple different things. One thing is, from the beginning, let's hear each other's voices, but then let's also agree on an outcome. We're not going to agree on exactly what it's going to look like from the beginning. Like, we have to take that journey of dialogue to get there. But from the beginning, do we all agree that we want to, let's say in a relationship, that we want on the other side of this, the goal is to part ways? Or if it's for us to come together, the goal definition, from my perspective, is one of the first things that if you can all agree on that, at least you're agreeing on something, and can get to common ground.
That might be, I shouldn't say easier, but more possible than we might think. For example, with the pandemic, okay, can we all agree that we have a common goal of surviving and having our loved ones survive, and bringing this to an end? I would hope the answer would be yes. Or with respect to issues in the country, other issues in the country, can we agree that in the language of the Declaration of Independence, in the language of the Constitution, can we agree that we would like to pursue a more perfect union? Okay, where everybody's rights are respected. Yeah, I think that most people would agree. Okay, so how do we get there? We can protest and we can argue, but now let's try to find some solutions. And I think the first thing that I wrote down when I was making a few notes is listening. Listening is so important, and I mean really listening to what the other person is saying, not half listening while you formulate your response that's going to, tell them why they're stupid and wrong. Really listen. Listen with the intent of understanding what the person is really saying. The fact that you understand it doesn't mean you're going to accept it and agree with it. But it helps you understand, and maybe you might realize something you hadn't if you're really listening and listening with an open mind to understand what the person is saying, what they're thinking, and why. It might not be as you perceived it or assumed it, and that I think is a really important thing. Trying to understand, and when you listen respectfully. When you speak respectfully. I got to say, the Congress of the United States could use a mediator.
Could they listen tonight? Do you think they should be listening tonight?
Maybe you got some senators and members of Congress. I don't know if they need a mediator or a first grade teacher, because a lot of this really goes back to what we may have learned in the first grade of just how to make nice with one another.
Yeah, and to that point, I mean, I've seen it even with I won't call any out specifically, but entities lately, not just people. It's not just person to person. It is groups, or it is who we look at as leadership, and whether it be in our nation or in our local communities or anything. That I don't know if it's because, there's so much this year, the anxiety of the year, like you said, the anger, like our benchmark for it, we're just carrying around all of this. But I've seen a lot, like you said, that just simple skills that we're skipping could really make a difference. And something you said there about like clarifying, because when we seek to clarify, you could say the color blue, right? And I have something in my mind what that looks like. And you have something in your mind of what that looks like. We both have blue shirts on right now. Mine probably looks black, but it's actually blue. It's navy blue, right? But seeking to say, I work with people on goals a lot of times, and I'll ask them something and they'll say XYZ. And I said, what does that look like? Right? Like, what does that actually, or let's use a lot of money. What is a lot of money for you? Those clarification questions, because everybody has a totally different mind set up here. And we might use the same language, but we don't all mean the same thing.
Right. And a lot of what we hear can be, when we process it with our own history, biases, leanings, interests, financial or otherwise. And that's one of those, that's why you really have to listen carefully. I mean, how many times have you been around somebody, and maybe I just talk too slow, but I can think of some people who you don't really get the sentence out, and bam, they're already either telling you why you're wrong or changing the story or whatever. It's like, could I just finish my sentence?
I have to work on that one, because I tend to, like, my brain goes fast and I want to go to the next thing. So yeah, that's it. That's a practice for me in my life.
But yeah, I think that's part of it, to let the person be heard. And that's another thing. Now, this is more in the mediation context, but it's not necessarily limited to that. People want to be heard. They don't want to be ignored or just patronized. They want to actually be heard. I keep trying to come up with some examples. Let's go on. Well, let's just go back to the mask thing for a second. Somebody's going into the store, they don't have their mask. The clerk or the greeter that says, please, you have to wear a mask. If you don't have one, we'll sell you one for 79 cents, or we'll give you one, or whatever. You can't make me wear a mask. Instant anger. Like, okay, well, this isn't the policy of this minimum wage worker. They're doing their job, and so why go off on them? But if you had a conversation, okay, I know you don't want to wear a mask. Maybe it doesn't even do what they think it's going to do, but it won't hurt. Why not give it a try, and let's see if that does some good. If everybody did it, maybe the docs are right, and maybe that'll be a good thing. I'm not asking you to do something horrible. I'm not asking you to put your arm in a cast and go around one-handed. So just stopping to think and not reacting with anger, and nobody's going to tell me, and I got to have it my way. And that sounds so simple, but we got to get back to that, because what's happening now is not going to work.
Well, it sounds simple. Yeah, it sounds simple. And I hope everybody that's watching right now understands we're not having a discussion on whether masks are right or wrong. Or they work, right, or their effectiveness or anything, right? Like, because sometimes you hear something and you're like, oh, this Friday Night Live was completely directed at XYZ. The whole point is that's an easy one to use right now because it's so prevalent. But it doesn't, sometimes in order to have, groups that are successful, or again, if the result that you want is in that store, you want to buy something, right? Like, let's say that that's the outcome that you want. You want that sweeper. I don't know what it is, right? But you want that. In order to get that, these are the steps that you need to take because of that store. That's their decision, right? Like, you don't run the store,
right.
So how do you, I think one of the things that I hear is, how do you listen enough or come open-minded enough to understand that there's another side to everything, but specifically to your opinion, there's always a flip side to that you maybe seek to understand.
Right. Yeah, and I think that when you're speaking, again, we already said when you're listening, do it respectfully and with an open mind, because you might learn something that is different than what you assumed. And I mean, that I have witnessed. Oh, well, I didn't realize that. If I'd known that, then blah, blah, blah. But when you're speaking, again, I think don't speak with the idea that I'm going to convince this other person or this other group that they're wrong. Just try to explain why you think the way you think, because that might light up something in them that will help them respond, not in an argument, but in but here, based on what you said, I think maybe we aren't so far apart.
Well, it's interesting because with Master Networks in our networking group of the entire Master Networks, the foundation is called Bond, and it's the framework in which we learn to network. And so the B, you never go to OND, right? Like, the first letter that you never skip is build on common interest. It's just no different when you're, whether you're just meeting somebody for the first time, business-wise, personal-wise, or that you're coming, let's say that you come into a situation and you haven't even met each other, or you do know each other and you're at each other. You're angry from the start, whatever cause it was. You still in that role, what I'm hearing, it's still in that situation, building on common interest is still the number one thing.
Absolutely.
To find what do we have, what commonality can we find, and then build from there.
Totally. Find something that we can agree upon, build on. So even if it's
that the whole world is horrible, right? Let's just agree on something.
Yeah. Hey, it's a start.
Yeah.
No, seriously. It's a start that can we agree that we're all looking for a fair resolution? Okay, good. So there's one thing. But even if they're just little things, or can we agree on this or that? Yeah, that's not a problem. Okay, good. So you build some momentum. I think that sort of people begin to drop their anger a little bit and begin to listen a little better. I've got it later in my notes, but maybe we jump to it now. The big thing is something that's almost disappeared from our vocabulary, and that's the willingness to compromise. There used to be, you study a little history, and we have compromises that have names. Maybe they weren't great, but they got a result.
They kept us all alive, maybe.
Yeah, government, they were able to come into something with very different ideas and each give a little or give a lot, but they had a resolution that allowed things to move forward. Compromise seems to now be confused with capitulation, and I can possibly capitulate, so therefore I can't compromise. Compromise is not an evil word. And of course, in the mediation context, if you're not willing to compromise, you're probably wasting time. You don't have to surrender everything. You don't have to just forfeit your rights or your interests, but you have to be willing to give a little, and maybe you'll get something. I once used this example of a nice freshly baked, I think it was banana cream pie, and two brothers, it was made, and the two brothers were looking at it, and each wanted more than half. And they argued, and they looked at it, and finally, by the time they got through arguing, the pie was covered with flies and was no good. So nobody got anything. Now, I know that's a little bit of a silly example, but sometimes if you're not willing to move forward and solve a problem, then the problem really becomes a bigger problem. So, yeah, I think compromise has to be in there. But I used the mask thing not to take a position, but to just illustrate. But let's take one that's also somewhat controversial, and I think it might be a better one for listening. Okay, when now that we're getting some form of sports back, even without crowds, the whole issue with the national anthem or taking a knee. Well, some people use that to take a knee during the national anthem as a form of protest. Well, part of the protest, in my little mind, is to get people's attention to something that matters to me that I think needs fixing. But then you hear people are just outraged. They I'm not going to watch the football or basketball anymore. They get angry. If you could have a group of the fans sit down with a group of the players and have the kind of conversation we're talking about, the fans could say, that just bothers us so much. It irritates us. It's disrespectful to the country. And the players could say, we don't mean disrespect. We're trying to get attention. We think there's a problem. Here's what the problem is. And if you're listening to the problem, maybe you get past the first problem and move on to something that can be addressed rather than just, throwing rocks at one another.
When you said that way of listening, I went back to before when you were talking about slow and fast. And I think we have to slow down in order to listen, right? Because otherwise we're just going fast. We're going into anger, anxiety, or whatever our opinion is or whatever, because we're not slowing down. And so I think the first thing, it was funny because I had a situation this week that I just needed to remind myself to breathe. Like I was going into something and I could tell that I had like heightened emotion around it or everything. Like I knew that was going to happen. So I put a little Post-it note right by my desk to breathe. And Bristol came in. I kind of forgot about why it was there. I used it then, but forgot and left it there. She came in today and she's like, what's that say? Why does that say breathe? And I thought, well, because we all need to, it helped me. It is just calm down, breathe for just a minute and then listen. Yeah. What is the longest, when you're talking, what's the longest mediation process you've ever had?
Single mediation?
Yeah.
I mean, one case?
Yeah.
Easy to remember that one. It was in the summertime, and I think we went 2 full days, including evenings, to about 8:30, 9 o'clock, and finally got it settled on the 3rd day. So that was the longest by far.
If you just lock everybody in a room.
They're over in a. No, that one, I mean, that's really longer than most. And maybe I'm just slow.
No, I'm just thinking
in
if you
those
lock
days, I
everybody
was
in a room,
on the bench.
you lock them
No,
all in a room, tell them to come out.
I've heard those stories from other court. I never either chose not to believe them, or if they were true, that's a shame. But these folks, as long as they were willing to keep going, and we, movement, it was a fairly complicated case. Complicated somewhat the fact that, we don't mediate our own cases. So it was another judge's case, and he was ready to pick a jury, which was kind of timing, but I had to keep him in the loop and ask for his patience because he was ready to go. And I think we're making progress, by 6:00 on the second day. I think he was having some doubts, but the case did settle. And sometimes it's just persistence and perseverance, keep people talking. I mean, I really think that was a key to that. We just kept them talking and thinking. They were not trying to destroy one another. They were problem solving, and they did it very effectively. And I just basically kept them talking till they reached an agreement. And believe me, no one was happier to have that settlement than me. But, they don't always work out.
Yeah.
They don't always settle.
So I'm going to throw a question at you. You may have the answer to this right off the top of your head. You might have to think for a second, but what are your top 3 book recommendations? If I was somebody who wanted to learn more about how to navigate these situations and kind of dig deeper, and I didn't have to go get my law degree to do some mediation.
Negotiate. Yeah, no, you don't have to be a lawyer. And then I think there are some situations where a non-lawyer would be a better, more effective mediator than a retired judge or lawyer. There's a book, and I hope I have the name right. It's Getting to Yes. And it's I think from a couple of Harvard professors, and that is a very good one on basic the art of negotiation. You asked for 3. I might have to get back to you on the other
2. You can put it in the comments later. You're starting to cut up, so you can put it in the comments later.
Okay. Like any of the John.
So before any thoughts before we wrap up of, what I heard from tonight and what I hope our audience heard was to slow down, to be open-minded when you come into every situation, but especially if it's a situation where there's going to be some angst, some opposition or polarization, and then to listen. And I think Lynn said it, seek first to understand, then to be understood, in listening first. Anything else that you would share with us to send us on our way of next week, all the things we encounter?
Well, to both listen and to speak with respect. I think that helps too. And to be willing to compromise. Again, you don't have to surrender your personal values, but to be willing to give up something in order to advance the ball toward the goal. The back to the pie analogy. You're not going to get the whole pie. So be prepared to enjoy your
slice of the pie. There you go. Figure that out. And one last
from me.
One last question from you. What is the funnest thing you've done so far this year? Did you get the question, or was it choppy? Okay. I wondered if your internet, okay. Thank you very much.
Totally cut out. Sorry.
Okay. That's okay. So I'm going to, Dave's internet was cutting out. So You guys, I'll summarize those 5 comments. I hope that you take this, and I know that we kind of had some different subjects that we were going on, but the heart of this is, how do we work well with each other, and how do we bring our unique selves to any situation? We used Dave's conversation about mediation, because really that's what we're doing all the time, whether we feel it, whether we know it. We're all working to come together and have successful lives in our family, in our business, in our nation, in our world. And so we'll talk about these, but we listen, we slow down. He added a few there at the end, reminding me that speaking respectfully is a huge one too. And then always being willing to compromise, and not looking at compromise as a negative thing, or something where you're not getting your way. So thanks for being with us on Friday night. And thanks to Dave for being my guest. I will see you all next week, and hope you have an amazing weekend mediating with everybody that you come into place with, and having successful relationships. So see you guys all later. Have a good weekend.